aging out of the foster care system is so not good in so many ways. They're just so vulnerable and have no support whatsoever. And just the outcomes are bad, for lack of a better term. And so I think just the more we looked into it, the more we were just like, this is what we need to do. You know, people think these kids are kids who've been in juvenile detention centers and they're rebels and they're gonna run away and they're gonna, you know, pick fights at school and all this stuff. And that's just not the case. Like the vast majority of the time, in our experience, you know, the kids who are 15, 16 years old, you know, they're not kids who seem like 21-year-old delinquents. They seem like 5-year-old kids who have never got the love and support they've needed growing up. And so a lot of ways they're little kids trapped in a big kid's body. So I think there's a misconception about what it looks like for a lot of teens.
I mean, there are definitely things that are different about getting teens versus, you know, having a baby, but there are things that are very nice, like that they sleep through the night and, you know, just being able to have just a totally different relationship with them versus what you would, you know, a baby, it's a lot different relationship, but it didn't really feel incredibly unnatural, I guess. Right. As much I expected it would feel more so, but it didn't really.
Yeah. Well, to me, I think a lot of people maybe have the idea like, well, if I haven't spent a lot of time around teens, then like I'm ill-equipped to do it. And it's like these kids, they don't need an expert on teens. You know, they don't need someone who's parented a bunch of teens before. Like, they just need someone who's going to love on them and give them support and give them stability, and you know, just be able to communicate that they care for them and that they're there for them. Like, I think people get more intimidated by it than they need to be. Mm-hmm. You know, obviously, if you think about, well, all these things that could go wrong and blah blah blah, and you hear these stories about teenagers, and it's like, if you're trying to solve those problems, you'll never decide to do anything. You know, but they don't need someone who's perfect. Like, we are far from perfect in every way, but they just need someone who's going to be in their camp for the long haul. You know, someone who's going to give them some love and stability. Like, I don't think you have to be an expert to do it.
Teens obviously have the least chance of getting adopted, and then you add in the fact of having a sibling group of teens, they have an even less chance. For most of these kids, their sibling is one of the very few people in their lives that hasn't let them down, and they might be the only person they're bonded to. And even having some experience with having family members who did foster care, you don't understand the importance of that bond until you bring these kids in and you see, like, you can see that they're the only person that they trust each other, and that's about it. And you think about I think about myself being 16, 17, and you know, growing up in a healthy environment and having to like go live with strangers without anyone, that seems terrifying. You add everything these kids have gone through, just how terrifying that would be. So I guess in some ways we kind of thought, you know, for them, it would be easier to adjust to being together, adjusting to new environments, being together, so they can do that together.
They just carry themselves with so much more confidence than they did before, for sure. Like, that's the most glaring thing to me. Yep. That before, they walk around with their head down all the time and mumble and don't want to be noticed, don't want to talk to people, and now like they're just kind of able to be themselves a little bit more, is what it seems like.
Lily jokes around a lot more, is able to just be a carefree kid, and yeah.
And then life skills, we've started to talk about those things a lot more. They both have jobs. They've both held jobs all through the summer and now into the school year at Pizza Ranch, and they're doing really good. Tommy got a raise the other day because he's a really hard worker. He's always got a smile on his face and stuff. So he works in the front, so with customers, and he's always bragging about how many tips he gets, at the end of the shift. But yeah, we're talking about saving money and things you're gonna have to spend money on. What it's going to look like having an apartment, buying groceries and all those things. We've started to have those conversations, just more so recently here, because in a lot of ways they've never really been able to even make decisions for themselves.
Right.
Whether when they were little kids or when they were in care, it's just, they do what the foster parents say, they do what the CASA worker says, their caseworker, they just fall in line. So I think like, it was kind of, it caught us off guard, I think, sometimes, like when we'd be like, yeah, you can, you know, do whatever you want, like.
They didn't really even know how to make decisions.
Right. Yeah. And so, and that's gotten, you know, way better now, and they've gotten better at like, just like asking direct questions, like, hey, can I go to the rec? Hey, Dad, can I go do this? Like, just like clearly, yeah, for sure. You know, like just little things that they didn't even know how to.
Their communication skills were very poor because they were never given the opportunity. They just were told what to do, basically.
Yeah.
And so being able to ask questions in a way that makes sense to the person listening, that was something that was we really had to work on. And they've gotten a lot better at that.
For sure.
They've gotten a lot better at owning up to their mistakes and to their, because at first it was never their fault when something would go wrong.
Right.
It was always someone else's fault, but they've gotten a lot better about that too.
Right.
Which is a huge thing. There have definitely been times where I've cried, like I'm having a hard day and I get this card and I'm like, yes, they love us so much. And so that, I mean, the one family in particular has been so good to us, and we broke our couch because we have a lot of children, and that month in particular, they gave us more money than they had ever, and it pretty much paid for the couch we bought. And
you know, knowing that people are thinking about you and that they're you know, on board with what we're doing, and that's honestly for me been more than the actual act of whatever it is they're doing. You know, just knowing that there are people who are there for you and thinking about you and praying for you. You know, because it can be a little bit of an isolating thing, because there are a lot of.
It is, yeah.
So it's just good to have, you know, people in your camp, people in your corner who are there supporting you, for sure. The more you look into this and you see what happens to these girls and boys who age out of the foster care system, and it's like, you know, life's hard enough when you have support and you have a family and you have people in your corner, and you know, these kids just have no one. And even if you don't, even if you have the kids for a couple of years and they decide to move out, and you know, these kids are infinitely better off, you know, being in the care of someone who can offer them love and stability, even if it's for a short time. And I think some people might be like, well, I don't know if it's worth it, you know, just for a year or two. And it's like, well, it's worth it to them for sure.
They grow up a lot, they mature a lot, and they're like so grateful that they have this family that they can go back to and spend the holidays with and spend birthdays with, and just if they find themselves in a tight spot, in a tough spot, that they can reach out to. Yeah, so I think of Tommy, he's turning 18 in just a few months, and I can't tell you how many times we've thought, what in the world would he do?
Right.
I mean, he probably would have ended up on the streets. Yeah.